the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you.
Sweet, we're back, and it should be a Wednesday when you're hearing this.
It'll be Wednesday.
So hopefully y'all have had a fantastic week. We are glad to be joining you midweek. We're going into the weekend soon. I have no idea what I'm rambling about at this point. But Taylor, how are you doing?
Good. I am. It is, I think I said last episode, it's raining, but which is so good because we had 2 baseball games today that got canceled. So that is great. So I can just like pack and be ready to go because by the time you hear this, I'll be in Tokyo.
I've realized, it's funny because I think of myself as like there's always something going on. Like there's always a schedule, there's always a plan, there's always a thing to do. There's never like just like pure unadulterated downtime. And then I think about your life
You have no idea.
and I'm
It's
like,
insane.
I probably have it easier than I think I have it.
Like the schedule that I've given to the grandparents for the time that we're away is like, okay, so 4:15 orchestra, 4:50 Spanish, 5:12 piano, 6 o'clock baseball. Like it's, oh my God, it's insane.
And you're working, and Juana's
Yes.
working,
Yes.
and you're shopping for a Subaru, and you're deciding on the color green. It's just like so much.
I know.
So kudos to you, Taylor. I do
Thanks,
not,
dude.
I definitely do not have what it takes.
I mean, you fit your life into the time that you have. Like I feel like when I was childless and whatever, I was like, I'm so busy and tired. And I'm like, well, I'm so busy and tired. But like, I know I'm doing like a thousand times more stuff. I'm doing
Right,
this
right,
also.
right. That's a good point. You fit your life into the time you have. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, we're doomed to fail. Thanks for joining us again. We're going to be covering my side of the episode spectrum today. I'm going to stop referring to things I do on the spectrum. That's not a good look, but that is what we're going to be doing. I'm going to start actually. Well, you know what? I'm going to leave it for the end. Never mind. I was going to answer some questions first, but we'll leave that to the end. So, Taylor, today I'm going to be covering a story about a place that is a type of place that I have tremendous fears of. And I feel like we kind of have touched on this before. I know I've talked to you about it before in some capacity, but I don't think I've ever done an episode on it. I literally did a Google or search because we're at like almost 100 episodes, so it's hard to remember exactly what we've covered. And so I've
Hmm.
had to do a search on our podcast to figure out if I've ever done this topic or not. But I'm going to be talking about cave diving,
Ooh.
which have I talked to you about this or am I making stuff up?
No, we've definitely talked about it. It sounds awful.
It sounds
You're talking about
awful.
like under the water cave diving, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. Not just like
Yeah.
spelunking and having it go bad. You're talking
No,
about
not
like,
Spelunky. I'm talking about like the most horrifying things combined into one, that being underwater with no way of getting out,
mm-mm,
being
hmm
super deep underwater, not knowing
hmm
what's down there, being stuck, being claustrophobic, being trapped. It's just like the worst of everything.
Yeah, we definitely talked about it, but I feel like not like specifically, but because it's terrifying and we agree to agree.
And I don't know why I keep coming back to it. Like there's some things I'm afraid of that for whatever
Mm.
reason I keep coming back to. Like in cave diving was one of those. Like I went through a whole spiel like maybe a year and a half ago where I watched everything YouTube had on cave diving gone wrong. And
Yeah.
then I stopped paying attention to it, moved on to other things. And then it recently just came back up for me. And the algorithms might just know me well enough to know when to kind of poke me on certain topics. And I think they
Hmm.
just caught me on this one. So that's what I'm going to be covering. And I'm going to be referencing several things. Go ahead, sorry.
Um, oh, do you remember how Natalie Wood, the actress, do you know who that is?
Hmm?
How she was mortally afraid of drowning and then she drowned.
Yeah.
That's all.
And Christopher Walken probably killed her.
Hmm.
Right.
Bananas.
Bananas. Um, but yeah, what I'm going to go through is I'm actually going to reference a YouTube channel, a great YouTube channel. Like usually these things aren't really well produced, but this one's incredibly well produced. Like these guys are real pros at it. It's called Dive Talk, and it's a it's usually like a 15 to 20 minute long episode per that is just these dive masters, these absolute pros, watching or talking about dives that have gone wrong and what they should have done or what they didn't do that could have been done or what they would have done in those situations. It's just really interesting just hearing like that perspective, which again,
Mm-hmm.
Monday morning quarterbacking, like obviously when you're not in the moment and it's not your own life at risk, you're going to think a lot clearer than when you're underwater, your visibility is completely clouded by sediment and you're running out of oxygen. Like totally different,
Right.
but
You're gonna be
still,
like, don't do that to start with.
right. Don't, yeah,
Step
just
one,
literally just don't do
don't
it.
do it.
I have thought, Taylor, that is probably going to be like, I don't know, like that I might be so afraid of it that I might actually do it because I'm
Right.
so it's almost debilitating how scared of it I am.
But I feel like you're gonna be like you don't do it when you're like 55 and have like a weird crisis, and then like all of a sudden you're gone.
No, no, no. I'm gonna my midlife crisis is gonna be getting a green Subaru.
We can drive them next to each other.
Right next to each other. So the topic I'm going to cover is actually kind of similar to my last topic. It has a similar distinction as Mount Everest does, in that it is a underwater cave system that also has a number of bodies in it that are
God,
unrecoverable. And so, what I'm going to
I hate
talk a
so
little bit is
much.
about this cave itself, and then go into a discussion around the most famous known death within it. And then I'm going to read a listener message from Nadine that she wrote into us and answer a question that she asked. So
Cool.
let's go straight there for now. So the cave I'm going to be covering is called the Blue Hole in Dahab, Egypt. It is also known as Diver Cemetery.
Hate that. Oh, was this? I feel like this is. Did you watch The Deepest Breath for this?
No, but I did
I
find
think that
out in
they
the
were
middle of
there.
researching. Yeah, when I
Yeah.
was researching, I realized that Deepest Breath. I've seen it and like, or I saw it on YouTube and I never watched it. But then I was researching this and they talked about it. So yes, if you've seen Deepest Breath, you'll know what this is. So
Oh my God, this is so scary.
yeah, yeah, and so you've probably all heard of blue holes because there's a lot of them. Like any depression in the sea or the ocean that goes straight down is essentially a sinkhole. And that is what they refer to as blue holes. Typically, over time, what happens is the ocean water just carves through the limestone rock, whatever it is, and creates a cave system. And so that's basically what happened here in this part of Egypt. So I'm going to describe it a little bit. Obviously, we know what blue holes are, but it's important to know what the features are that are kind of around it. So again, the blue hole itself is in Dahab, Egypt, which is on the Red Sea. It is located in the middle of a coral reef within a few feet. It's like the entryway to the blue hole itself is like a few feet away from the beach. And I looked it up. I looked up the not Yelp, but on Google Maps it has like the businesses that are
Hmm.
dotting that area. Isn't this cute, quaint little beach town? They have like cafes and little shops. It looks absolutely adorable.
That's what the guy at Deepest Breath, they had like a diving school there. I am getting afraid thinking about like swimming 10 feet on the surface above the blue
With
hole.
that underneath you, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
There's a specific phobia that's called that I definitely have. I absolutely have that phobia, and I can't remember what it's called. But it's something about like how the fear of like what like deep water. I forgot what it's
Hmm.
called, but anyways. So like I said, it's a tiny little coastal town. It's a bit of a touristy destination. And so you have like the from the ocean side, you have the blue hole, you have this coral reef, you have this tiny little cute little quaint town. Then behind it, you have this like mountain range. So I can see why if you're in the area, yeah, go visit, go visit. It's got to be lovely. So
Yeah.
part of the reason why fatalities here are pretty high has to do with some features of the blue hole that people come to dive to and see and to experience. It also just generally has to do with the area as a whole, because again, it's a touristy spot. If you're a recreational diver, then it's perfect for what you do. Like there's people snorkeling in there. Like it's great. It's
Hmm.
great for all of that stuff. And one other aspect is that the water temperature is really amazing. It's like 68 degrees, which is
Oh,
good
that's
for,
nice.
well, it's good for diet. It's not at the level where people would be scared or terrified of it. It's 68 degrees throughout the water column. So it's consistently
Hmm.
68 degrees. So people feel like, I'm not doing like a big ocean thing. I'm doing like a small little, there's kids waiting in the pool next to me kind of
Right.
a thing. So it kind of lulls you into thinking it's like a benign thing that you're doing when
Hmm.
obviously history is going to show that it's not. So feature wise, there are two distinct parts to the blue hole that are relevant. If you're looking out from the beach over towards the ocean, over the blue hole, you'll notice there's like a part of it that is like visible on the far edge, which is like the outer lip of the blue hole. That is called the saddle, which is the top of the blue hole, essentially covering its end to the ocean.
Hmm.
The other side of it, on the northeast part of the blue hole, looking out again from the beach side, is a feature called the arch. So this was discovered by Israeli divers in 1968 during a brief moment when Israel occupied the Sinai Peninsula, which now is part of Egypt. And that's when they started mapping out this cave and they found this feature that is called the arch. So, for context, the saddle part of the blue hole, that's 23 feet deep. So what you're looking at, if you're looking at it from the top down, where you're seeing the rock formation part of it, that's 23 feet under the water.
Hmm.
If you're technical enough, you can go down to approximately 170 feet, which is when you see the top of the arch. That part is the key. The top of the arch starts at 170 feet.
Okay.
And if you go into it, then you swim out 85 feet and you pop out of the ocean. And that's what it is. That's like what people go there to do. That's what the fun thing is to do. The depth of where the arch starts is partially why this area is littered with bodies. So it's almost at the depth where it's pretty much at the depth where you should be a technical diver to do this dive. So being a technical diver obviously means you have certifications and paperwork and all that stuff. But the biggest thing that it means is that you are not diving on straight oxygen, which we've talked about before. If you dive on straight oxygen, you go deep enough into the ocean, to the water column, then you are subject to nitrogen narcosis. You're subject to this feeling of being stupid. You're subject to embolisms. There's a
Hmm.
whole host of horrible things that can happen. So as a technical diver, when you go deep enough, you have to be breathing this special mixture combination of chemicals instead of regular atmospheric O2.
Hmm.
So if you see the top of the arch, then yeah, you would basically just swim through it, and that's kind of like that's all you're really looking for. Because if you don't get to the top, if you don't find the top of the arch, the bottom of the arch ends nearly 400 feet at the bottom on a steep slope that goes directly into the Red Sea. Terrifying.
Ugh.
Um,
Horrifying.
And so a lot of folks go there thinking that, okay, I'm going to be on this cusp of needing to be a technical diver. It's beautiful. The weather's great. The water's great, all this stuff. And they hop in with regular O2 and they either miss the arch or they realize after going in that they don't have enough oxygen or cognitive abilities to go all the way through the gateway to the ocean. And so that's kind of where the deaths happen.
Couple questions. How long
Yes.
does it take to swim down to the top of the arch?
So I don't know that, but I know how long it doesn't take because we're going to cover that.
Wait, I'm gonna turn my camera off. I didn't hear that. Say it again.
So I don't know how long it takes to descend down to hit the arch. I know that it is dramatically less than 2 minutes. So I would assume, based on what I'm about to tell you about the story that we're going into, that you probably should be looking for the arch after descending somewhere around 45 seconds or so.
But you don't have an oxygen tank or you do?
Yeah, you have an oxygen tank.
Well,
Well,
then why
no,
can't you use it for
so
hours?
a lot of people have an oxygen tank, but what you're supposed to have is this Trimex mix of chemicals and sorry,
Hmm.
gases that you're supposed to be breathing
Why again?
because it's deep enough to where oxygen at that depth gets compressed within your lungs and your system that breathing
Oh.
it causes what's called nitrogen narcosis, which is this intoxication feeling. You're confused, you're high, you feel a little bit drunk. Like that's what you need to avoid so you have your faculties about you to be able to do what you need to do. And then beyond that, you also need to run compression stops. So if you're doing it really diligently, you're breathing this Trimex mix, and you have planned decompression stops on the way up the water column. That's how you're supposed to do it. But again, given that it's a tourist destination, given that it's like right on that cusp, people are going down there and doing this with regular O2 on their backs.
So I'm thinking, okay, that clears it up for me. So I'm thinking like scuba divers can scuba dive for like a really long time, but they don't go that deep.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like the
Totally.
depth. It's not like it takes like 2 minutes to get there, but you're going so deep that like no problem.
Exactly. It's always depth. It is always depth. So rough estimates, I couldn't find precise numbers. Rough estimates put the number of deaths at the Blue Hole, it's somewhere around 200 people. Most recreational diving here started like in the early 2000s. So that's like the timeline you're looking at. So roughly 2 deaths a year, give or take, happen here at this Blue Hole. We're going to go over one of those stories here now. So on April 28th of 2000, a Russian dive instructor named Yuri Lipski visited Dahab with the goal of diving Blue Hole. He was warned against this by the local dive expert who was certified for technical diving. Basically, this guy was like, hey, Yuri asked his technical diver to take him down, and he was like, I'm not going to do it. He asked him twice, and he said no. And that guy's name was Tariq Omar. Part of the screenshots that I saw when I was researching this was from the Deepest Breath, so I think he's in that, right?
He probably is. Yeah.
So, anyways, Yuri decided against Tariq's advice to take this dive, and so on this day, on the 28th of 2000, he put on a single tank of atmospheric pressure O2, strapped weights and a GoPro to himself. I wrote GoPro, but no, it was not a GoPro. He was not doing a GoPro with it. Like he had like a real camera. Like this is a real sizable thing, and he entered the Blue Hole. So
strapping weights to yourself makes me throw up.
I know. I read that was like, I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that.
1,000% no. So
it's like the joke, right? It's like when you hate someone, you're like, just strap weights to yourself and walk off the pier. But no, you're legitimately doing this.
No.
So it looks like he entered the water at around 5 p.m. or so. But I don't actually know for sure if that's local time or not. I'll tell you how we know that here in a minute. He never came back up. He never surfaced. And apparently his mother knew what his plans were. And so she presumably didn't hear from him, assumed the worst. And given how small this little town was, she reached out to some folks and nobody had heard from Yuri. And she eventually learned of this guy, Tariq, who was the technical dive person on this part of the in this part of Dahab. And so the assumption was that something happened to him while he was on this dive. So Tariq, at this point, had become the unofficial body recoverer in Dahab, and he decided that he was going to dive in and jump in and see what happened. For what it's worth, he says he does this always pro bono. Like he never charges anyone to do this, which is kind of noble. I would charge you $1 million if you wanted me to go recover the corpse of your dead person's body.
Yeah, I feel like I'd save people for free, but I wouldn't get
Yeah.
money for free.
That's being too nice. That's being too generous.
Yes.
So Tariq hops into the Blue Hole again, technical diver. He puts on his Trimex, does all the things that he's supposed to do, and he goes all the way down to the bottom. So at 400 feet on the seafloor, he finds Yuri's body and is able to bring it back to the surface. On it, he finds this camera, which apparently had been rated to be used underwater up to 280 feet, but somehow this thing still worked, and it actually captured the entire dive, which is terrifying. Like you can legitimately watch this thing. You go on YouTube and just look up Yuri Blue Hole, and it's the first thing that pops up. What you see on the video is that almost immediately after entering the shaft part of the Blue Hole, the part that you're just supposed to descend down, you can't see anything. So it's super dark. So even if your light's looking forward, you could be swimming right in front of the arch and not know it. So he clearly misses the arch,
Right.
you know he misses it because you also miss it. You can't see where it's at. That's why when you asked me like at what point you hit, I was like, I don't know because I watched the entire thing over and over again. I couldn't see where you would see the arch. So for the vast majority of this video, you're literally staring out into open, like the tunnel that leads into open ocean. You're staring into open ocean, but you don't know that because it's invisible in front of you. So it does not appear that he is monitoring his depth or his rate of descent whatsoever, because the only time you really hear and sense the panic in his breathing is around the 6 minute mark from when the dive starts. I say 6 minute mark, that's when he entered the water. But like when you enter the water, you're still like the coral part. It's beautiful. It's blue up there. Like there's other divers down there. There's snorkelers. It's like that thing. And
Mhm.
then he enters this part that where he's completely alone, this shaft part. But he enters. It's about 6 minutes in from the start of the video until this point, and you start hearing the panic in his breathing, and you're like,
Oh my God.
"Oh, something went really wrong," because you can see that the camera is looking down and seeing ground. And it's at that point you hear a beeping happening on this dive computer he's wearing on his wrist. And he waves it in front of the camera. He's looking at it, but you can't really tell what it says. It's just beeping at this point. So something's
Mhm.
gone wrong. And he's like, realized, oh shit, something's gone really, really wrong. So he's at the bottom. He's on oxygen only. And he
Mhm.
starts kind of stumbling around the bottom. Like it looks like a drunk person dragging themselves along like a street, except you're at the bottom of the ocean at this point.
Oh my
Um,
God.
he starts fumbling around and presumably he's trying to release his weights to ascend, which again, he's suffering from narcosis at this point. Like he is confused, he doesn't know what's going
Mhm.
on around him, and he's feeling super high, super drunk at this point. And regardless, if he ascended, if his weights had dropped, the oxygen that is compressed in his lungs would have rapidly expanded because he wouldn't have had the forethought to decompress on his way up. And he also wouldn't have had the tanks to decompress. He only went down there with one oxygen tank. And
Oh my God.
so it probably would have killed him anyways if he just ascended all the way to the top. But between the time of seeing kind of what I mentioned earlier of that clear, fresh blue water that was, tranquil and full of swimmers and divers, until you see the sea floor, 2 minutes, just two
Wow.
minutes. So it went by super quick, which, like, again, that's why I'm kind of guesstimating, like, probably in the 30 to 40 second range is like when you should be seeing this thing, given how quickly he dropped. But again, it's all variable. So I
Mhm.
watched that dive talk guy, the YouTube channel, talking about this dive. And one thing he said about this is that the weight component of this is incredibly critical
Yeah.
because A, you have your own body weight, then you have all your gear. Then this guy also added on apparently what is a rather large camera system to be able to
Mhm.
record all this stuff. And on top of that, there's a distinct difference between how your body buoyancy acts, whether it's in freshwater versus saltwater. And add to that the fact that there might be parts within the water column that you're hitting fresh water or water that isn't as salient or saline or whatever you
Mhm.
want to. It's salty. It's not as salty as other
Mhm.
parts of the water, and so you descend at different levels. And so getting this calculation wrong is apparently super, super important, making sure that you can time when you should be doing a certain thing in the water column, which he obviously couldn't or didn't.
Wow.
So one YouTube comment I read on this that was it's super poignant if you watch the video is that the line between when things are fine and when things are bad, it's like impossible to discern. You're watching this
Yeah.
video and like again, it goes by really quick. And you're like, I don't know. Am I looking into the ocean? Am I looking at the archway? Am I looking at what am I? And all of a sudden you're looking down like, that's not good. That's the ocean floor.
Mhm.
Like I shouldn't be here. It just happens so seamlessly. Um,
Mhm.
and this is the most famous death at the Blue Hole, specifically because we can see it happening and that because he recorded it, which is super rare. The only other time I've actually seen a video like this was it was from 1994. There was this guy named Dion Dreyer. He dove into this other blue hole, this sinkhole. Actually, that's not a blue hole. It was a sinkhole because it's fresh water, so they're different. But it was another sinkhole full of water. It was about 927 feet to the bottom, and a diver had tried to go to the bottom before and had died. His name was David Shaw. Apparently, his body was never recovered. There's this guy named Dion Dreyer who found it by accident when he was down there at one point. In 1994, he went down to recover it and he recorded himself doing it. And it's the exact same thing. Except this time he intended to go to the bottom, but when he gets to the bottom, he's hit with the narcosis. And he's like, he doesn't know what to do. Like he's just fumbling his hands. He doesn't know where he's at. Like it sounds terrifying. Like if anybody
Hmm.
knows what this feels like, please write to us. I'm actually like, I don't want to know because I would be dead, but it's gotta be terrifying. Like you didn't know that you're
Yeah.
underwater. Like there's so many stories of this that I read where people would be hit with this, and then they would either start declothing under, like getting undressed underwater, or removing their regulators out of their mouth because they like assume they're on water. They're like that high on something. It's
Yeah. It sounds like when you're
wild.
like so cold that you take off your clothes.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're just like confused and like normal things don't make sense anymore.
Your brain's just playing tricks on you. It sounds
Hmm.
horrible, but so that one, the Dion Dreyer one, that one's called Bushman's Hole. That one's also recorded. So it's really just these two that I found that were actual recordings of people going through the narcosis part of this on video. So you have that. In 2014, there was another round of technical divers, and you can tell how different it is because you look at these guys. They have like hundreds of pounds of equipment on them, like all these different kinds of tanks with different kinds of mixtures of them. Like it is like that's the level of detail you need to go through when you do this kind of diving, apparently. And they ended up documenting three bodies. So there's a video that you can actually find. So again, this is the Dive Talk YouTube channel.
Hmm.
This video is called "Divers Reacted to Bodies Found at World's Deadliest Dive Site," and it's around the 4 minute 50 second mark that you start seeing bodies. They literally record these bodies on the bottom of the bottom of the sea floor,
Ugh.
and they find three of them. Apparently, these three are somewhat known to the people that live in this part. They are all men who died in the 1990s. They weren't really discovered until the 2000s, and apparently the reason they're still down there is because they're basically just gelatins inside of a diving suit. And so
Oh,
recovering the
yeah.
body at this point is like there's no utility to it. Like there's nothing you would really be able to bring up, and you'd probably die trying
Hmm.
anyways. And so they just like fuck it, leave them down there. But so anyways, that is the story I was going to cover for today. I'll pause there, Taylor, if you have any thoughts on that or things you want to add.
No, I think that's crazy. I don't think you should go there. I
You'll
don't think you
know.
should deep
Yeah,
dive.
you'll know because there's another part of Blue Hole that's, I don't know, maybe like 20 yards from the actual beach part.
Mhm.
It's called Bell's. It's like Bell's Passage or Bell's something. I didn't write it down, but that's where like recreational divers go. That one you only go 30 feet underwater, and you actually go through the cave system and you come out the blue hole. So obviously you're not going anywhere near the arch.
Hmm.
Um, but apparently on the walk from where you would park your car to where you would go to the dive site for Bells, there's just tombstones of all the people that
No,
have died there.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one that says don't let fear stand in the way of your dreams. That one's for a guy named James Paul Smith. And I am going to counterbalance that and say, guys, always let fear stand in the way of your dreams. Always. Like literally just like never stop surrendering to fear.
I love that. That's really great. Yeah. Hmm.
Can you make sure that that goes my tombstone? Never
Yes.
never stop surrendering to your fear. Um
Perfect.
So yeah, that is my story. I have a little uh ancillary component I want to discuss about the Everest podcast as well, but I'll
Yeah.
pause there for you.
No, that's scary. Another scary thing. Feel nervous, which is great. I just love feeling nervous. So thank you for that.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
I can't shout out the dive talk guys enough. Like you will spend if you start right now, you won't stop watching until you're done. Like you will abandon your life and dreams and just watch this YouTube video. It is so interesting.
Totally fun.
Um, but we did get a message from Nadine. Thank you for writing in, Nadine. Always love your questions. You mentioned about whether Sherpas have summited many times. So actually, yeah. So apparently, the top 10 most summits of Everest of all time have just been Sherpas because they keep going back to your point
Right.
of just basically being there for the rich folks who are hiring them. And there's one person, one Sherpa named Cami Rita, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, and he has summited a record 28 times.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's so ridiculous that like he can just do that and he's not like on the news all the time.
it's kind of like
He
when you
just does
see
it.
those. It's kind of like when you see those goats that are on like these cliffs that are sheer rock faces, and you're like,
Yeah,
what is happening? Like,
that's really incredible.
how how is that even possible? I mean, I think if you just live there, it's like, yeah, all right, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna leave and go up to the summit of Everest. I'll be back by dinner. I guess like
He's
it's
like,
just normal.
fine, I'll take your money, rich guy who wants
Yeah,
to do this, but like I do it all the time, no big deal.
yeah. Like it kind of made me think like I don't feel weird about like rich people using them for this because it's like, man, like they just do this. Like, it's not a big deal to them, and they can make a
I
ton of
know.
money. So,
Really wild. Yeah.
with that said, I am going to let Taylor kind of play us out, and I'm going to mute myself while my dog is barking at probably a squirrel that's outside that is going to drive everybody insane.
Wonderful. Thank you, Farz, and thank you everyone for listening. We are going on spring break. So next week, I have some re-releases that will be recorded, and then we'll have a new episode mid-April. And we hope that anyone actually on spring break has a great and safe and fun time. And if you have any questions, please email us at doomtofailpod@gmail.com. Any ideas, any feedback, anything would be great. And then also we are on social media at doomtofailpod. So you can find us YouTube, Instagram, all the places. And we hope to see more of you. And thank you for listening.
Sweet. Thanks all.
Cool.
Bye.
Thanks.